In case you have not noticed yet, quite a number of Black Americans are returning to Africa. Africa is welcoming them and effectively encouraging them to return to the motherland. A history of Black Americans turning to Africa is a rich and complex narrative that intertwines with the broader African diaspora experience. The most popular destination is Accra, Ghana. As the U.S. continues to confront its racist past, Ghana is turning that history upside down and welcoming Black Americans back home. In 2019, the president of Ghana, Nana Akufo-Addo, invited all African descendants in the diaspora to mark the year of return, commemorating 400 years since the first African slaves arrived in the colony now known as Virginia on a slave ship. The invite prompted record tourism to Ghana and an increase in Americans who applied for visas to stay. It is common knowledge that African Americans are not treated favorably in the United States. Please, kindly subscribe to the channel. It helps the channel to grow. Let us continue. It was the events in the United States in 2020 and the Black Lives Matter movement that drove a real surge in people looking to move out of America and into Africa. The Elmina Castle on Ghana's Atlantic coast is more than 5,000 miles from America's shores, but the 5-century-old structure occupies a particularly dark place in U.S. history. Hundreds of years ago, it was a central trading hub where African people from around the continent were sold into slavery.
That's out there is different from the story of the people. Why do we not?
The issue here is that if the truth, truth hurts. If the truth is told to our brothers and sisters over there, exactly they will have an informed decision. That's what I mean. The only thing that they portray out there is Africans. Africa is full of wars, diseases, poverty. They don't tell the correct thing. Yeah. That's it.
So who would be most upset? When you say our brothers and sisters would be upset, the African people abroad or the white people abroad?
I'm saying our brothers and sisters. What I mean is that we're one whole family, which was forcefully divided into two. So every African living in the diaspora has a blood relation directly in Africa. So that's why
that's what brothers and sisters. Okay.
This is Cape Coast, where the slaves were shipped off to America and the Caribbean.
This is the first castle.
We've come a bit late. It's closed. We're trying to gain entry by speaking nicely to the guards. I'm hoping to get to the gate of no return and take some pictures, but here we go. That's the surrounding.
Dungeon. Bring in your light. Thank you very much. Yeah. The largest female dungeon. 150 of our people were sleeping on the floor. As hard as it is. There were no means of convenience in here. Empty containers were placed at the various corners for them to eat and so on. But they were not coming from Ghana alone to this Burkina Faso, Togo, Benin, Cote d'Ivoire, Mali, Niger, Nigeria, Cameroon, and the rest. They were all brought in here. It took them 1 to 2 months before they arrived because in the olden days there were no cars, so they had to walk barefooted from the various countries to this place. Some were even left at the expense of wild animals in the forest. And when they got here, they were very late. And as women do the administration, practically they did everything on the floor. That's why there's a stench. Many died. When they died, they were not buried. They were removed and thrown into the ocean for the fish to feed. They gave them something small to eat just to keep them alive. Some ate, some refused to eat, they preferred to die. And they never had a chance of cleaning their teeth nor bath. And all this before it was closed. The whole over there leads to another room called a magazine where they kept their ammunition. where there's a leakage, the chemicals came straight to the shore. These spirits were brought here to pay tribute to those who died.
We better go.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are heading back from the door of no return.
Sorry.
There we go, that's the door of no return, and we're going to go.
Roberta, thank you. Very powerful story. I've never been to Ghana, and I started looking at that piece. I want to go. I don't know anybody, any person of color that hasn't had an uncomfortable encounter at some point in your life in this country because of the color of your skin. That's it for me. I just can't imagine for myself living anywhere else, but I understand what she's saying and how she's feeling.
No doubt. Well, as you pursue your piece of the American dream, if that comes at the cost of peace of mind, oftentimes you start to think about where else you could live. And for a black man in America, you try to find out where your roots are. And I do feel like even if you feel like returning to Ghana isn't for you, finding out your roots is very important because in order to know where you want to go, you have to know where you've been.
You have to know your past.
That's for sure.
Unfortunately, so many people really don't know their past or understand history.
I mean,
That's something we need to change too.
the idea of returning has been controversial since literally the days of Abe Lincoln. And what to do. I think it's an indictment of America in 2021 that there are 5,000 black Americans who've already gone back to Ghana because they don't feel comfortable here. What are we doing wrong that we don't make them feel welcome in this country?
For sure.
But it'll be interesting to see, you can understand how comforting and different it would be to go from a place where you are a black face among non-black faces to be one of all, of many.
Yeah.
As the U.S. continues to confront its racist past, Ghana is turning that history upside down and welcoming Black Americans back home. To date, not only are Black Americans going to Ghana, they are moving to a lot of countries in Africa, namely Ghana, Nigeria, the Gambia, Kenya, Tanzania, Zanzibar, Uganda, South Africa, Ethiopia, Botswana, Rwanda, and many more other countries. There are a lot of professional and connected Black Americans who find it challenging to live in the U.S. For example, Sanjaya Davis was the epitome of Washington cool. She was a well-connected, successful therapist trained to deal with emotional health. And yet, living in the capital of the United States, she says, she was constantly looking over her shoulder. She was living what people would consider as American dream. She was educated professional. She had good friends, and yet she never felt safe. It is a kind of trauma that seems embedded in a traumatized Black American's DNA. From transatlantic slave trade to the Tulsa Race Massacre in 1921 that saw some family members displaced from their homes. The trauma of racism can take emotional and psychological toll on some Black Americans. Some even do not realize how traumatized they are until they are pulled by the police. The immediate thought all the time is, are they going to be safe if a policeman pulls one over? Are they going to be physically safe? Are they going to come out of it alive? All these thoughts flash right there. The George Floyd's murder at the hands of a police officer in Minnesota sparked a global cry of outrage, demanding that all Black lives matter. After witnessing that dramatic event, made it real and conclusive for some Black Americans to make a decision to get out. During Ghana's 2019 year of campaign, the publicity attracted a record number of Black American tourists, and its aim was to convert visitors into residents. Eric Bennett, the head of the African Diaspora Forum, said that after George Floyd was killed, the organization was inundated with inquiries. It was just overloaded. Apparently, more than 300 people were making inquiries on how they can relocate to Ghana. It spurred a sense of people anteing to get out of America and return to the motherland. Over 30,000 Black Americans have since moved to Africa. Some have settled and doing businesses. However, some have returned back to the U.S. because they did not research before moving sadly. Home is not a place. It is how you feel, where you are. It is the feeling of belonging, the feeling of welcome, and a sense of freedom. Many Black Americans have been able to trace their roots of their enslaved ancestors' awful journeys to the New World back to the Elmina Castle, and others like it on Ghana's Cape Coast. My own sister visited the two places in Ghana, and needless to say, she was overcome with emotion. She walked down the corridors shadowed by horror, past the church where slave traders would pray above chained bodies, and into the godforsaken dungeons where tens of thousands of people perished. The gate of no return was overwhelming. Only a third of Africans dragged into the castles in bondage made it out alive, and only to be pushed onto the ships, never to return to the land of their birth. It is heavy, you feel it. This kind of history can make someone think differently of America. Black Americans have started to come to the realization of their place in America. They are beginning to realize that America was really never meant for them to be there, as free people. All that said, the immigration of Black Americans to Africa is influenced by a lot of factors. Many are seeking to connect with their ancestral roots and history, while others are looking for new opportunities or a change in lifestyle. Ghana has been a significant destination due to its Year of Return campaign. The Beyond the Return is campaign is a 10-year project launched by Ghana's government. The aim is to continue engagement and encourage people of African descent to consider Africa as a place to live, work, and invest. There is also a project offering free land and a settlement within the town of Asabu along Ghana's Cape Coast. It's important to note that while some Black Americans are making the move, the overall migration trends within Africa are complex and driven by a range of factors including economic opportunities, conflict, governance, and climate change. Black Americans moving to Africa may face several challenges, including legal residency requirements. Understanding and navigating the legal process for residency can be complex from country to country. Cultural adaptation. Adjusting to local customs, languages, and social norms require significant effort and can be a source of difficulty. Economic differences. Adapting to different living standards and economic environments may pose challenges. Professional integration. Finding employment or establishing businesses can be challenging due to different market dynamics. Social connections. Building a new social network and finding a sense of community may take time. Despite these challenges, many find the move rewarding and are supported by growing expatriate communities and networks that provide guidance during the transition. Here's a free advice for any Black American or European contemplating onto moving to Africa. 1. Research. Learn about the country you are moving to, including its culture, language, economy, and political climate. 2. Legal requirements. Understand the visa and residency requirements for your destination. 3. Healthcare. Check the healthcare system, consider getting health insurance that covers you internationally. 4. Find a suitable place to live, whether it is renting or buying property. 5. Financial planning. Budget for your move and ongoing expenses, and set up a bank account if necessary. 6. Employment. Secure a job beforehand or research the job market if you plan to find work after arriving. 7. Language. Learn some key phrases in the local language to help with daily interactions. 8. Packing. Decide what to take with you, keeping in mind the climate and availability of goods. 9. Community. Connect with the expatriate groups and networks for support and advice. 10. Cultural sensitivity. Be open to learning and respecting new customs and traditions. Regardless of how you feel about America or Europe. Report to your embassy of High Commission. This is handy, especially when things go wrong. The embassy or High Commission will be ready to help you. If you would like more African stories, please subscribe to the channel. I wish you all a peaceful weekend.
Hi, Philip.
Hello.
Hi, Philip.
You ready for us?
Yes.
For me? Before we start the tour, first look into the background history of the place. And as the tour progresses, if there's any question, please don't hesitate to ask. The Portuguese first came here in 1471. They came along with European goods like guns, gunpowder, spirituous liquor, mirror, in exchange for gold, ivory, later spices. Their system of trade at that particular time was the barter system, exchanging goods for goods. And the major commodity that the Portuguese were much interested was gold. And they could say the rate at which our people here were giving out their gold gave them the impression that the land here could be in abundance of it. So they named this place Almina. In the Portuguese language, it means the mine. Our people at that time couldn't pronounce it properly, and it was corrupted into today's word, El Mina. And that invariably became the name of the town. Edina is also a Portuguese word, aldeia. In the Portuguese language, it means the village. So our people couldn't pronounce it, and it became Edina. So Edina and Elmina are wrongly pronounced Portuguese words. But it had a name before they came. This place was called Anomansan, and Anomansan simply means inexhaustible water. 1482, they built this castle, and upon completion, they named it after one of their saint patron in Portugal called Saint George's. So this is Saint George's Castle or Elmina Castle. And to the Portuguese, they had two reasons of building the castle. One, they wanted us to believe that this was only built to protect their trade and their traders, to have rooms for their missionaries. And before the early 16th centuries, all the rooms on the ground floor in the castle were their warehouses. But when the attention shifted from gold and others to human trade, these same warehouses were converted into dungeons where the Africans were kept. And in total, the castle is talking of a minimum of 1,000 Africans at the time, 400 women, 600 men. I believe we should also understand the fact that the Portuguese here in Elmina did not get up one day and said to themselves that they want to go into slavery. At least something brought about it, or something might have happened somewhere. 1441 was the first time ever the Portuguese started taking Africans to Portugal. And the one who did the capturing was called Antem Goncalves, but in some books he's called Antonio Gonzalez. And he was one of the explorers of Prince Henry of Portugal. He came to a place in Senegambia called Real de Oro, which means River of Gold. When he was going back to Portugal, he captured 10 Africans, others are saying 12. When they got there, the prince saw them and he was very, very happy for two reasons. One, he wanted the most intelligent ones among them to be trained to become missionaries to hasten the spread of Christianity. chose some to serve as interpreters when they come back to Africa. But however sad, when these people settled, they never came back as intended or planned. They ended up in the palaces and plantations as slaves, and since then, no European explorer came to Africa when he was going back than African captives. That is why others are of the view that possibly the Portuguese had that in mind before building this castle, simply because they started taking Africans in 1441. 30 years later, they got to Elmina in 1471. 41 years later, that is in 1482, the castle was built. Situation changed when the Spaniards got to America and the West Indies. They used the Native Americans, called the Amerindians or Red Indians, to work on sugar, tobacco, cotton plantations. The story says Spanish brutalities overwork and the effect of European diseases decimated the indigenous population, so it had to stop. And there was this Catholic priest whose name is always mentioned, Bartholomew de las Cascas. He suggested to the Spanish crown to arrange for Africans, which to him are much stronger and were doing the same work under similar climatic conditions. So in 1512, 1515, there about 50 Africans were taken from Spain to Hispaniola, Santo Domingo, now Haiti. And when they were tried, they proved physically strong. The demand for the Africans started coming in, and that marked the beginning of what is then the unfortunate transatlantic slave trade. The transatlantic slave trade is also known as the triangular slave trade simply because the network involves Africa on the eastern side, the New World on the western side, and Europe to the north. On the 29th of August 1637, the Dutch captured the castle from the Portuguese. And on the 6th of April 1872, the Dutch ceded this very castle to the British. But at that time, slave trade had stopped. And I reason to say that the British never, ever took part. They did. But they used Cape Coast Castle and not Elmina Castle. So they were here until 6th of March 1957 when we finally became an independent state. So as it stands now, it's 541 years. Still look.
No. Hold on.
Okay.
Okay.
They knew that they were making so much, Portuguese were making so much money, so they mimic what they were doing.
And for me, I read a lot, so I just recommend that there are books that I want to recommend for you. We said over, I need to get them when you get back home to share with us. It's very, very, very important. You know, to the white man, it's history. To us, it's our story. You can tell it.